Michael, we are live. How are you?
I am super duper, Martin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great as well. It's great to be live again.
It's great to be live again. Hello and welcome to AGTP Daily, the show that goes live every weekday, Martin, to discuss the most important tech stories in the U.S. and abroad. Today is Tuesday, the 7th of April, 2026. Let's get right to it. As always, we're going to cover some news you might have missed overnight. We're going to talk about, is OpenAI even a frontier model company anymore? Obviously, we have to cover this idea. Is Anthropic's revenue growth a sign that it's just starting to win? And then we're going to do another version of Ask Michael Anything, a little bit of AMA. Martin, talk to me about why Anthropic's revenues are so stunning.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was the big news over the weekend, right? Over the weekend, where Anthropic just passed $30 billion of annual revenue.
It's a gigantic number.
So first, it's gigantic, but the growth is insane. So let's go inside of that. Actually, at first, they didn't announce the revenue. They announced a major compute deal with Broadcom and Google.
They did.
For multiple gigawatts of next generation compute that should come early 2027. Okay, so the goal of that is to scale their infrastructure and build the capacity to sustain their growth. That was the big announcement. But inside of that, there was a little paragraph,
little paragraph.
yeah, which was pretty funny. But then they announced that their yearly revenue is now $30 billion. To put that into perspective, Airbnb is 12 billion.
Yeah.
Spotify is 19.
Spotify is $19 billion.
19 billion. So which means now Anthropic is bigger than Airbnb and Spotify combined.
And bigger than Nike.
And that's
more revenue than Nike as well.
Okay, so that's crazy.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's crazy. So that's really impressive for a company that is just like a few years old, right? But what's super impressive to me is the growth, because they went from 1 billion yearly revenue at the start of 2025 to 9 billion per year at the end of 2025 to 14 billion in February 2026 and now 30 billion at the beginning of April. So basically in like 3 months and a half of 2026, they went from 9 billion of annualized revenue to 30 billion, like in just 3 months. Just insane.
Yeah.
So also something else that is really insane is that they confirm that they have now over 1,000 enterprise customers who are spending over $1 million per year on Anthropic plans.
That's insane.
That's insane. And this number has doubled since February, where it was 500. So this is just really crazy. So also something that is actually, I think, very interesting is that with $30 billion of annual revenue, now Anthropic may actually have more revenue than OpenAI.
We'll get to that.
Yes.
We will get to that.
Great. So the last time OpenAI shared their revenue, it was $25 billion, 25. That was at the end of February. So we don't know the number right now. It's worth to know that in February, Anthropic was 14 billion and now it's 30. So maybe OpenAI had some growth as well. But it's also possible that Anthropic now is the number one AI provider in the world, and that would be the first time, because OpenAI has been leading this since the launch of ChatGPT in November 2020.
We're going to get into detail about both of those things actually in a second. Do you have any more you want to say about this?
Yes, I have a little bit more before the next news.
Go for it.
But so I think like something that is really important to really understand like why Anthropic growth is so big compared to OpenAI is because they really had completely different strategies, right? Like on the Anthropic side, they really targeted enterprises, very large deals, where with OpenAI, they more like targeted the consumers through ChatGPT.
Yep.
And something that Reuters said is that 80% of Anthropic revenue comes from enterprise clients.
Right.
80%. So if you do some quick math, 80% of 30 billion is $24 million.
$24 billion.
Sorry, $24 billion.
It's so good because 8 times 3 is easy to calculate.
Exactly.
It's so
Super
easy.
simple.
Go ahead.
So which means if we split that across 1,000 enterprise clients, that's an average of $24 million of revenue per company. or like $2 million per month.
That's
per company.
insane.
This is insane. And so that's what I wanted to put that into perspective with our story of yesterday, where we talked about Anthropic banning OpenClaw users who spend $200 per month,
Right.
where
like,
80% of their revenue comes from people spending $2 million per month. That's like 10,000 times more.
So I always like to say this, like I always want to be in the meeting.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the meeting in Anthropic where they just go like, look, if we ban this OpenClaw thing, we're going to lose all of our revenue from our consumers. And some guy goes, yeah, next question.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
Exactly. So last point, and then we can go to the next story. I think it's just worth noting that here we are talking about annualized run rate and not actual revenue. Sure. So it's like if all of our clients keep paying like what they are paying right now, at the end of the year we make $30 billion, which is very likely to be much higher at the end of 2026. When you go from 9 billion at the end of 2025 to 30 billion in April, it's very likely to be much higher than that at the end of the year. So I think that's the big question that we can ask. How much is it going to be?
Okay. So I want to follow up on that. Then I want to get to something on OpenAI. And then I want to dig into both of those things, right? This idea of, is OpenAI still a frontier model company? And is this revenue growth? I want to dig a little bit deeper into that as well, a sign that it's starting that Anthropic is starting to win. But just to give a little bit more context to what you said, which is kind of amazing, they have 10 times their revenue every year for 3 straight years. If they do it again, they'll hit a $100 billion run rate by the end of next year for a company that earned its first dollar of revenue 3 years ago.
Already?
I just got to look. You can't fake this.
The growth is insane.
It's insane. It's a real chill. Okay, let's do a little bit on this. So yesterday we had this whole conversation about the rumor that Sam Altman and what's her name, Sarah Friar, the CFO at OpenAI, were not getting along, and that at some level they weren't even talking to each other. Well, Liquidity says now, in what they call breaking news, Sam Altman has reportedly sidelined OpenAI CFO Sarah Friar after she raised concerns, which we talked about yesterday, that the company is not ready for an IPO, despite leading the largest private funding in history. And look, one of the points that she was trying to make, and we talked about this yesterday, was that Sam Altman has essentially committed publicly to spending $600 billion in the next 5 years. That's $120 billion a year. And it's interesting, though, that he wants to take her off the pitch. He wants her to stop playing in the game. But for a company that's only a few years old, and I wouldn't categorize OpenAI as a startup. It's too big. It has too much revenue. It's raised way too much money. And it has 4,500 employees now. It'll probably have 8,000 by the end of the year. This is not a startup at any level. But normally the CFO is the adult in the room at this stage of growth for any kind of company. And to sideline somebody with really great experience who also, frankly, knows how to raise money, has done a really good job of doing that, to stop her now from reporting directly to the CEO and to report to the head of applications feels like a weird thing, but it corroborates the stuff that we talked about yesterday. Yep. Okay, let's jump into this in more detail, right? How focused is OpenAI on its model business, on its frontier model business? And as we were talking about before, if you just flip those words around, how focused is it on its business model, right? Because those things matter. I would say to the listeners this: OpenAI is no longer just a model company anymore. But the real question to me is, does it even know what it's becoming? And let's give a little detail here. Over the past week or two, 2 things stood out to me in the United States. First, and we talked about this a little bit already, OpenAI acquired TBPN, this founder-led Silicon Valley talk show that built a loyal insider audience on YouTube and X, with OpenAI saying that the show will remain its editorial independence. Second, there was also reporting that OpenAI's ChatGPT ads crossed $100 million in annualized revenue. This is the pilot that they're running on this new ad business that they were talking about in just 6 weeks. Just 6 weeks, with more than 600 advertisers already involved, and self-serve ad tools. So automating this process, I think that's going to come sometime this month. And if you put those 2 moves together, the company starts to look really different than it did just 3 or 4 months ago. It's no longer just an AI lab commercializing models through subscriptions and APIs. It's now moving much more visibly into narrative management, audience capture, commerce as well, and obviously we just mentioned advertising infrastructure. Its own finance chief, so Sarah Friar, the CFO, said in January that the business model now spans subscriptions, APIs, commerce, and even a free ad-supported tier. And that means that this is not some accidental side experiment, this stuff that they're doing. It's part of a broader monetization design. But to be fair, I'm skeptical, right? And I'm an enthusiast. I really am. I'm like a very positive sort of pro-growth kind of guy.
That's true.
But I am though, right?
Very
I'm
positive.
very positive.
Very enthusiastic.
Maybe very enthusiastic, maybe too enthusiastic sometimes. But this is definitely true. But just because they make a move that's deliberate doesn't mean that that move is coherent. And right now, OpenAI looks to me less like a company executing a well-defined strategy. And you kind of hinted at this when you were talking about Anthropic. That's a well-defined strategy, the focus on the enterprise, right? And OpenAI looks more like a company that's trying to become too many things at once. And let's just break this down. Is OpenAI, in this case, showing strategic maturity, or is it revealing a growing lack of focus? If you want to be charitable here, I think the interpretation is kind of obvious. OpenAI has massive infrastructure costs. One of the reasons why they raised so much money and why they said they're going to spend so much money over the next 5 years. Enormous investor expectations. Think about it. Some of their biggest investors, particularly for the last round, Amazon, SoftBank, NVIDIA, and their customer footprint is expanding. Ads, commerce, and media are natural extensions, it seems to them, of a product that increasingly sits at their center of search, research, shopping, discovery, and just day-to-day work. OpenAI has explicitly made the argument that its monetization should scale with the value users get. An interesting point to make, right? And that now includes advertising and commerce alongside the subscription and API business that they've had forever. The problem is, to me at least, that the company's recent moves don't feel like disciplined extensions of those things. They feel like a company that's kind of searching, and I would suggest in some cases searching around in the dark. Reuters wrote just last week about OpenAI's problem, which is finding focus, noting that in the past 6 months, and I remember reading this as well, it had redrawn its product roadmap twice, amid pressure from Google and Anthropic's businesses. And around the same time, OpenAI closed that gigantic $122 billion round that we just mentioned and said that 2026 would be about practical adoption of AI tools and just AI infrastructure. But now, that practical adoption seems to include not just better models and enterprise tooling, which is essentially what Anthropic is focused on, but also ads, shopping, creator distribution, policy-adjacent communications, and now media ownership as well. And that is where my skepticism starts. A focused company generally narrows, right? Generally narrows. And Steve Jobs famously said, when he was defining focus as not saying yes, but saying no to the 100 other good ideas to concentrate on what really, really matters, okay? This one appears to be widening. Their scope appears to be widening at a time where I think they should be focusing, and they're saying yes to way too many things. And even the symbolism here, to me, matters. OpenAI said that it paused Sora. This was like, what, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago? I can't remember exactly when. Their video app to focus on coding tools, which sounded like prioritization. It also sounded like they were copying what Anthropic was doing as well. But then it turned around and bought a talk show. I don't know how internally they square that circle. I always say, Martin and I always joke about this. I always say, I want to be in that meeting when the decision gets made. Like, how does this come up? We're going to cancel Sora because it's we don't have enough resources to do this. We're not focusing on the things that really matter to us, but let's go buy a talk show. I really would have loved to be in that meeting, right? Reuters framed this as part of their writing, as part of a desire to better articulate its vision and shape the broader conversation around AI. I get it. They want to have kind of their own internal communication strategy. They want to have their own internal PR. But buying a talk show to me, and we talked about this a lot already, doesn't seem to be like the best strategy. But when a company says it is focusing and then starts buying media assets when it's not a media company fundamentally, I think the market is entitled to ask whether focus now means whatever management wants it to be on any given week. I mean, just imagine other companies that do very specific things. Think about if the UFC bought like a tennis team. They might be good at managing it, but it's a fighting company whether it's wrestling or MMA or whatever, it's not about tennis. I would make the same comment if I saw that happen as I see this happen right now. And my view is for OpenAI is that this is not random, but it's not coherent either. They clearly understand that their consumer distribution is strategic. The issue is that the company increasingly looks like it is layering new business models on top of some unresolved identity questions, which is why I asked at the beginning of this, do they even know what they want to become? And we talked about it a little bit, but I think it's worth going into this again. Can TBPN, can the acquisition of a media company realistically remain editorially independent once it's owned by one of the main companies that it covers? And I know Martin and I were joking about this. They didn't go live on Friday. And we spent a little bit of time at the end of yesterday's show, a little bit of a bonus conversation on, are they ever going to come back? Why did they not do it on Friday? They came back on Monday with a big announcement, we're back. Okay, big deal. But the question for me is, can they be editorially independent? They're both saying the right things, and I guess today's show seemed editorially independent, so fair enough. But OpenAI's announcement says editorial independence is foundational and explicitly protected. But I've heard these stories before, and everybody's making this point, right? But the question is not what their press release says. The real hard question to me is, what does it mean once the incentives for the people that are actually running this talk show change? Right? Because TBPN is not just some generic media asset. It built its entire reputation as kind of an insider arena for tech executives, founders, and investors, a place where they could go and talk about things that they may or may not have talked about anywhere else. And the hosts were uniquely qualified to be able to do this as well. TechCrunch described it as kind of a safe space where major industry figures could talk candidly to insiders, right? And that was actually super important. TechCrunch also reported that the show will report to Chris Lehane. We mentioned this yesterday or the day before. OpenAI's chief political operative. And several outlets said it would sit within OpenAI's strategy organization. And again, just to put a finer point on it, I think this reporting line really matters. A show, I think, cannot really be treated as both editorially independent and strategically useful to corporate communications without some kind of internal tension. Because at some point, they're going to have an opinion that conflicts with the kind of thing that OpenAI wants, the narrative that OpenAI wants to control. And the real question to me is, like, editorial independence is like pregnancy. You can't be half pregnant. You can't be half editorially independent either, right? And I think those goals are going to be really hard to balance on day one or day two, because day one they went home. They didn't do anything. But on day two, it's pretty easy to maintain sort of the same cadence and the same pace. But let's see as we get to day 3 and day 30 and day 60. There's another issue here too. Once TBPN is owned by OpenAI, competitor participation becomes less likely. Even if Anthropic, Google, Meta, or XAI executives still appear, the atmosphere completely changes. It's just going to be a little bit more cheeky, it seems to me, because maybe they don't want to answer these questions, whatever those questions are. Now, sure, everyone's only getting like a 7 to 10 minute block, so they're not going into super depth either. But still, why am I going to go into your show and help you control narrative about a business in which we are competing? To me, it just doesn't make any sense. Right? Essentially, they're stepping into a venue that's controlled by a rival. And again, it makes no sense to me. I don't think it kills the show overnight. Like I said, on day 2, it's still there. But it can definitely subtly narrow who shows up, what gets asked, and how critical the tone becomes. Because again, if I have a competitor come on my show, I can ask you really tough, hard questions in an effort to try to embarrass you. I can think of 1,000 questions, right? They could embarrass all of my competition. But I would never ask them those before. And if you watch the way the show works, it's meant to be fun. People are having a good time. Mm-hmm. Martin knows this. There's a gong behind them. I think it's insane, but it's still there, and part of it is for the entertainment and the fun. Wired, another tech publication, put this criticism way more bluntly than even I'm putting it. Okay, describing the deal as OpenAI buying itself some positive news. This is also possible. With all the sort of negative news around OpenAI, and we'll get to some of that later when we do some of the AMA stuff, right? Particularly this article written by Ronan Farrow in The New Yorker. Maybe they just wanted a distraction. And for them, if you raise $122 billion, maybe it's just a cheap way for them to get some kind of distraction. Hey, focus on these guys. Focus on Jordy and John. Those guys are super entertaining. They're the ones with the gong. So can TBPN remain useful and even sort of targeted? Sure. But can it be what it was before? That for me is way harder to believe. Okay. What happens to trust when the same product that OpenAI has is becoming both an assistant and an ad service? Again, they're creating some tension here, right? And this may be the more important long-term issue than whether TBPN remains independent or doesn't remain editorially independent. Because the bottom line is, the advertising business, and we talked about this a little bit as well, look at the way Google used to look before their ad business was their main driver of revenue, and look at what it is today. Okay? OpenAI's official principles are straightforward. Ads are separate from answers. Ads are separate from research. Conversations are private from advertisers. They said that users can control the personalization, and the company says it does not optimize for time spent and will always offer ad-free paid tiers. This is what I want. Right? I pay for YouTube, and part of the reason why is I don't want my experience ruined by having some ad interrupt me in the middle of something. And when I'm using ChatGPT or when I'm using Anthropic, the last thing I'm focused. I'm intensely focused. I want to get stuff done. I want to learn something. I want to accomplish something. And what I don't want to do is be interrupted by an ad for a vacuum cleaner, for a hairdryer, for some kind of shampoo. Okay? And sure, I get it. They don't want to optimize for time spent, because that's essentially what Google's doing, right? The more time you spend on Google's platform, the more time you spend on YouTube, the more ads they can serve you. Fair enough. But in the current test right now, ads are shown to logged in only adult users. I don't know how they're actually doing that, but there is a way to do it. On free and go, not on plus, not on pro, not on business, not on enterprise, and not on education. So fair enough. And this all sounds reasonable. And yet, Reuters reported that the pilot crossed $100 million in annualized revenue in just 6 weeks, with fewer than 20% of eligible users even seeing ads daily. And this is interesting to me, because we just finished having a conversation, which Martin went through really, really well, about how fast Anthropic's revenue is growing, 10 times every year, annualizing at a $30 billion rate. So to talk about $100 million in 6 weeks, it sounds like a big number, but is it really that big?
Yeah. Compared to like the growth of Anthropic from like 14 billion in February to
30 billion now.
So
right?
now in like 6 weeks we're talking like $15 billion growth, right? So
right. So OpenAI says that trust metrics have not been hit, so people still trust them just as much, even with this. But again, this is small, and advertiser demand still remains really strong here. And the self-serve tools are on the way. I worry about self-serve as well, because I want to understand like what types of protections they're going to have. In the real world, there are things you cannot advertise on specific services. So I really want to understand what the rules are around what you can and cannot serve ads on here. Because once their ad starts working, it's unlikely that it's going to stay small. Again, see Google. OpenAI's own language already points beyond simple sponsored placements. Its January and March materials describe a free ad and commerce-supported tier, richer shopping experiences, deeper merchant integrations, and an agentic commerce protocol connecting merchants and users through discovery. This is all part of this ad business and the ad infrastructure. The company says that more people are starting their shopping in ChatGPT, which frankly I'm doing as well. I don't know, do you do that when you're looking for something to buy?
I don't, never. I think from my point of view, when I want to buy something, ask ChatGPT, I think he has no idea.
But I tried this, right? Because one of my biggest issues, and I'm curious if you experience this as well. Okay. When I go to these big marketplaces, I type in the exact product that I want.
Yeah.
Like literally, if I had the SKU, the SKU, I would type that into, and it just gives me something else.
Yeah. This is like one of the biggest problems you've been talking about like for like 10 years, right? Like
in e-commerce, right?
Discovery on this e-commerce platform is so hard.
It's so hard.
Because with like all of these upsells and cross-sells.
But also it's because it's advertising. Amazon apparently makes $56 billion a year in revenue from ads.
Wow.
So that means if I type something in, it's going to show me an ad that's associated with that as opposed to the product.
Yeah.
Anyways, one of the things that OpenAI is saying is not just advertising. This is the beginnings of a commercial intent engine. And this is important because a shopping assistant is basically trusted differently from a feed, a search engine, or a marketplace. People use ChatGPT not only for shopping ideas, but for health questions, work tasks, personal decisions, and sometimes pretty sensitive conversations. Like at some level, I'm afraid to type some stuff in there. I don't want it to know that like my knee hurts.
We will get back to that.
We will definitely get back to that.
That's one of the topic of our
I wanted to make
AMA
sure we
at the
mentioned
end.
this here.
This is good. This is good. This is good. This is good. And I think like for everybody who's watching that, think about it.
Put
Like,
a pin
think
in that,
about,
by the way.
like,
Go ahead.
But think about like all the information you give to Chat GPT, and you are right. Sometimes you're like, okay, I wonder if I want to tell him that, right?
Yeah, like there are things that I would tell you and talk to you about.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
yeah.
do you think this thing for my niche? Should I do this kind of
And
thing?
so imagine if I keep a book with everything that you
that
tell
I
me
said in
about.
it. I know. We'll get to that.
Imagine that. But yeah, we will get to that.
A digital book. Okay. OpenAI knows all this stuff about you, which is why its ad principles are very, very careful. And I've done a lot of thought around this. But the contradictions here are obvious. The more that ChatGPT becomes a place where people decide what to buy, where to go, and what to do next, the greater the temptation is for the company to monetize moments of decision making. Right? And this is what search has been doing forever. And this is where my skepticism, I believe, is really warranted. Not because OpenAI has already broken the trust, although we can get to that too, but because it's building a business model that's constantly going to test the boundaries of that trust. It's just going to keep walking right up to the edge and maybe not cross over it. Maybe. But once the organization gets used to the ad growth, it's a little bit addictive. It's like a drug. You're like, I'll just have another glass of wine. That's what I really feel like this is going to be like. And then that clean separation between helping the users actually learn stuff and accomplish stuff and monetization becomes harder to defend in practice. So this just gets back to the original question here. What kind of company is OpenAI actually trying to become now? And the better question to me is, do they even know? In my head, the answer is very broad, and in a way maybe too broad. It's trying to become a company whose business scales with intelligence, right? Every time there's sort of some sort of intelligent thing that people want to accomplish, they want to be part of that decision-making process. And that includes subscriptions, it includes team plans, APIs, commerce, ads, and eventually new models like licensing and even outcome-based pricing. They're going to try to build a lot of stuff in here. And frankly, if you listen to Sam Altman recently, he says that something huge is coming really soon. Now, this could be vaporware. We listen to Bill Gates talk about this all the time when it came to Windows. There's some big new features coming into Windows. This is where vaporware, the term, was actually invented. I'm not suggesting that Sam Altman is doing that. But let's see. Everything they're doing sounds really expansive and ambitious, but it also sounds like a company to me describing an entire economic layer rather than like a focused identity. And again, we spent the beginning of this segment talking about focus is about saying no, not about saying yes to everything. And maybe that's really the point here. Maybe OpenAI wants to be the default interface for all digital actions. It's a big goal, right? I mean, look, excuse me, when Microsoft said literally like in the mid to late 70s, their goal was to have a PC, a computer on everyone's desk, literally the entire world laughed at them because nobody had a computer. They did though, you're laughing, but they said that.
Okay.
Bill Gates said that. Our goal is to have a computer on everybody's desk, not just at work, but at home. But back then, computers were like really, really expensive and out of reach for most people.
Wow. Okay.
But the idea that that was the goal seemed crazy. So maybe this seems a little bit crazy too, but maybe not. They want people to discover stuff, compare stuff, decide. They want them to code, automate, and maybe even watch some branded media stuff inside too. So maybe in that sense, the TBPN is not a weird side purchase. I mean, maybe TBPN is just the first foray into media. And maybe if I really rethink this, maybe that's why the guys from TBN said they want to do this. More resources to build out the most modern television network, and I'll put television in quotes, that's ever been built, because now they have the resources to do it, they've got the discovery to do it, and they have the intelligence around their platform to be able to make it something that's never been made before. Okay, let's move on. So Anthropic, as Martin mentioned earlier, is experiencing incredible revenue growth. And not wanting to let OpenAI dominate the news cycle, as Martin said, it's locked in some future compute. And while OpenAI is drifting into the media business and drifting into the commerce business, Anthropic remains laser focused for now on its core business and its core competency. So when they made this announcement, I just want to dig into this, just two quick things. What are they telling them? Why did Anthropic actually want to make this announcement? And the obvious answer is that the numbers are really great, right? We talked about this, $30 billion of annual run rate. That's really great. But the obvious answer to me is they want to tell people that our business strategy is working. The market demand for Claude is real, and that the company is trying to get ahead of the next bottleneck before it becomes a crisis. That's why they ordered all of this compute. And here's the other thing that's really interesting. How did you describe the compute that they ordered? Do you remember?
How did I describe it?
How did you describe it? Because you described it very specifically. You described it in megawatt terms.
Yes.
In energy terms. I just want people to get their head around that too. Yeah. You didn't say they decided to buy 38,000 chips.
No. Yep. It's
right?
in what?
They bought megawatts of compute power.
Yeah.
And this is important for people to know, because that's the most important part of this, is that the energy that's driving this is the important part of what the outcomes is going to be. Okay? But it's also the reason why they made this announcement is because they're telling the world what kind of company they want to be. And again, the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, particularly after the OpenAI conversation, is because I wanted to draw a distinction. OpenAI wants to be everything at all times, and they want to be everywhere. And it looks to me like Anthropic doesn't want to be that at all. They don't want to be everywhere at once. It looks like a company that's trying to become the best serious model in the market. Its recent public messaging has stayed tightly centered on model quality, coding, agents, enterprise use, and core model performance. And if you think about it, what did you say? 80% of Anthropic's revenue comes from enterprise. So whatever their strategy is, it's working.
Yeah, when you think about it, like they have no image generation, no video generation, no audio, nothing. They just have like i2, Sonnet, Opus, Cloud Code, that's it.
Done.
They have nothing else, right?
Done.
And when you have like everybody else who's doing like a million products, and OpenAI being the number one at like having such a huge portfolio.
Yep.
Anthropic has i2, Sonnet, Opus, Cloud Code, that's it. Done.
Yeah, exactly. And if you go back to this is actually super interesting too. We didn't get this tale before too. But Claude Code didn't exist 14 months ago.
Yep.
Okay? It did not exist, and now it's a $2.5 billion run rate.
They ship like crazy on this platform. Like the last few months, it's been just like insane.
And one of the other details I think is super interesting about Claude is that 60% of the Claude code is written by Claude.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I'm sure it's overlooked by some of the people that are inside the company, but it's written by their own product.
Yeah.
They're dogfooding this at a serious level. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Right. And you saw the leak like two weeks ago, like the Cloud Code, like source code was actually leaked by.
I did a whole segment on this a couple of days ago.
And so some people were making fun saying that the Cloud Code platform was actually more open source than OpenAI.
Exactly. It sounds open in the name.
Exactly. So yeah.
Maybe at some point, OpenAI is going to change its name. Look, one of the other parts of this announcement is that they do keep highlighting Claude Code as a major growth engine.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we already talked about their $2.5 billion run rate. And I think all this matters because in this frontier AI business, strategy drift is really expensive. Really expensive. I mean, think about it. Anthropic just went out and raised $30 billion, which without OpenAI would seem just like a ton of money. And again, we talked about Agnes. You saw that those guys just announced a $20 million raise in Asia. Maybe 122 is just really too big, and I think that's because their strategy drift is really expensive. And if you're building at this scale, and I think Anthropic understands this really well, every distraction has a megawatt of power bill attached to it. And I guess the other thing that I just want to focus on is why does this make Anthropic look more coherent than OpenAI right now? OpenAI is still a model company, obviously, but it's now moving into areas that are completely unrelated to that. And maybe all of this stuff that they're doing becomes like this powerful distribution flywheel. Maybe. But right now, to me, it raises a harder question about coherence. Is it a coherent business model? Is OpenAI still trying to build the best models? Are they focused well enough on their frontier model business? Are they trying to build the best consumer app to allow people to actually use this anywhere they want at any time? Or are they trying to build the best ad business, the best commerce layer, and now a media influence machine too? Because these things are not the same job. And just to make the final point, Anthropic, by contrast, looks narrower, more disciplined, and even if its compute strategy reflects that, it is not betting on one stack only. Reuters and Anthropic both note that it uses a mix of AWS Trainium, Google TPUs, and NVIDIA GPUs, and that looks less like wandering to me and more just like a pragmatic optimization. Get the best performance mix, reduce dependency risk, and keep Claude improving. Okay.
Here's some idea to add to this story. I don't know if we covered that on AGTP in the last few weeks.
Go for it.
But OpenAI has also shut down recently their integration with Shopify checkouts. Like you just mentioned, like commerce inside.
Yeah, commerce. I didn't know.
GPT.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But that was like a huge announcement. Sorry, they made last year, where you could like integrate your Shopify checkout inside GPT. So when it says, "Hey, I want to buy some shoes," buy this one, and then just click, and then boom, that goes through Shopify, and the users can pay directly inside ChatGPT.
Yep.
And that has been like, I think 3 weeks ago, that has been shut down as well. So that's another initiative that has been shut down, right? So,
but also think about this, right? We talked about this with TBPN a couple of days ago. What do you do with the team that was working on that?
Yeah.
Right, because every time you build a business, you have to get an organized team to do it. You have to have a manager to do it. You have to have a budget to do this kind of stuff. You have to have some internal corporate structure to do it. And when you just shut it down, there's a team of 11 people sitting over there who now wonder, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Where do you fit them in? Because they've been working on Sora for this amount of time, or they've been working on the Shopify integration for this amount of time. What do you do with them? Right, and you've already said actively that you're going to increase your staff.
Yeah.
So you can't fire those guys and gals because that would be weird.
Yeah, they say that they're going to double their staff.
Double, almost double. They want to go from 45 to 80.
Yeah. But it's true, there's a lot of mixed signal from OpenAI, right? Because they said they're going to double their staff, but they also said a few months ago that they were reducing their staff.
Right.
And then they said they double it. Also, like you remember a few weeks ago, you did a whole segment on that, when they were starting to work with VCs and PE firms to actually pay them fixed return,
pay them big money.
Yeah, pay them like big money to actually
give to their companies to then use OpenAI.
And so that was their way into the enterprise world, right? Like their shortcut maybe to the enterprise world.
But I mean, imagine if McDonald's raised money and then went all down Tonglor and gave that money to you and me and everybody else, so we would go buy burgers at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Seems a little bit weird. Okay,
let's
jump into the AMA section on this today. And I want to start with this guy, Orion's Belt, or Ryan. And I want to get back to a little bit of this stuff about Sam Altman. The New Yorker just dropped a massive investigation into Sam Altman based on over 100 interviews, some previously undisclosed memos, Dario Amodei, so the founder of Anthropic's 200 plus pages of private notes. I cannot imagine what those things look like, since those two really do not like each other. And it's the most detailed account yet of the pattern of behavior that led to Sam Altman's firing and his rapid reinstatement at OpenAI. I think people forget this. He was actually fired.
For a few days, yeah.
Right. And the title of this article in the New Yorker was called "Sam Altman May Control Our Future. Can He Be Trusted?" And this was written by Ronan Farrow, a guy who has the ultimate respect of everybody that reads his stuff, and one of his writing partners at the New Yorker called Andrew Morantz. And I just wanted to dig into this a little bit because the core argument of this piece, based on the coverage around it, is that Altman helped build OpenAI around this idea that advanced AI needs careful stewardship. This was his whole thing at the beginning, right? We need to be careful about this. The reason why I'm quitting YC is because this AI thing is coming, and I want to make sure that somebody who's going to be careful is going to be stewarding this thing in the right direction. But some former colleagues and board-level figures have long worried that he's so politically agile, that he's highly persuasive, and not always candid. Not always candid. Like, how would you translate that? I would translate that as, he's lying.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not always candid, yeah.
Anyway, this piece written by Ronan Farrow and Andrew Morantz argues that the central question is no longer whether OpenAI itself can be trusted, but whether Altman can be trusted with so much influence over the future of AI. It portrays him as highly effective, which he definitely is, politically skilled, which he definitely is, but also very powerful, and a figure whose honesty and judgment have been doubted for years by some of the people that closest to him and some of his biggest supporters. Mm-hmm. Okay, there was the board crisis that he had before. He was also fired. And it also shows up in this kind of continuous tension inside OpenAI's original mission. The company was created to build powerful AI safely. Okay, this is just like Google. Their original mission was, do you remember?
To organize the internet?
But also, what was one of their big ethoses is don't be evil.
Don't be evil, yeah, right.
Okay, don't be evil.
Yeah.
And this was Sam Altman's idea. If we want to build AI, but we want to build it safely. Mm-hmm. But
I remember.
But the reporting suggests that some insiders came to believe that the person leading that mission was a little too slippery, maybe, to actually do this. And the article really is about power concentration. He's presented not just as a CEO in this article, but as someone sitting at the intersection of frontier models, capital, policy. There's a whole bunch of stuff about him trying to convince the U.S. government to do certain things that maybe they should or should not do. Some public narrative stuff, which we already talked about through TBPN, and just overall institutional influence. The implication that questions about his character, because OpenAI is becoming so powerful, now matter beyond OpenAI itself. And in that context, I want to go on to the rundown, right? Because while he's doing all of that, I think the real point here is that humans are just multifaceted. They just really are. They're not just this one thing. They're not just the one thing that is detailed in this article. Because he also, according to the rundown.ai, Sam Altman just published a 13-page public policy blueprint called Industrial Policy for the Intelligence Age. And the subtitle is Ideas to Keep People First. At some level, he believes some of this stuff. And I just want to note these proposals. A public wealth fund where every American gets stake in AI growth.
That's
right?
nice.
No, it's really good. It's very like, look, there's going to be dislocation.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that, people don't die from dislocation. Robot taxes. So any sort of automated process where AI is involved to replace payroll taxes. Because he's worried that payroll taxes is going to get hollowed out. Because if you lose your job, you're not paying taxes. Then how do we provide public services, right? But someone's going to be doing that job. It may just not be a human.
Imagine.
Maybe an NHI. Is that what they call it? Yeah, a non-human ID.
Yeah.
Right, maybe doing that.
So what would be the framework for that? It would mean like the AI now becomes an employee, like they need to be registered.
But they will be. We talked about this on one of my other episodes, and that was the reason why this term NHI is there is because there's an onboarding process that human resources actually has to do for every, because if you build an agent, it's a thing that's working inside of your company. Someone's managing it. Someone has to review it. Human resources has to know it's there. It may have an employee ID. And if that's the case, there has to be some way to mathematically calculate the value that they're creating and pay taxes on that.
Yeah, makes sense. Huh?
It does make a certain amount of sense, right? He's also suggesting a 4-day work week at full pay, funded by AI efficiency gains. It kind of makes sense when you start thinking about it. I think the next one is actually super important too. This idea that AI is a human right, and then making access as foundational as literacy and electricity.
We will talk about that after as well.
Yeah, but you understand, like,
one of the big points.
that's going to be hard to do per se. But I think you have to think about it. Go ahead.
But it's true that in this regard, like OpenAI plans and like the access to ChatGPT is much easier than any other model, right? Like it's really.
Is it?
It's much like, I mean, it's cheaper. Like a lot of people, they are going to have access to the plan for free with ads.
I know tons of people that don't pay for it.
Right?
Tons of people.
Tons
and they use it every day.
Right?
Yep.
They use it every day, and
Every
that's
day.
enough for them. And now they are going to have ads. But if that's the way that OpenAI can make enough money to pay for all of this compute that they give for free.
Yep.
That helps here, right? That helps with giving access to everybody, and no one else is doing that, right? So if we can frame this narrative, and if this is really what they think about, I think this is cool. This is really cool because it is an increasing problem that is getting more and more. Like now we can see the difference, and we are going to talk about that after.
Yeah. So the other thing he suggests is what he's calling a containment playbook for autonomous AI. This is really just like regulation, because once you release an autonomous agent into the wild, it has to have some kind of guardrails. There has to be governance there, right? Because otherwise they're just going to do anything. And an auto-triggering safety net with unemployment benefits that auto-activate when AI displacement hits certain thresholds, which just means that, like, if a company announces they're firing 30,000 people because AI is replacing all those jobs, that some automatic trigger just gives benefits to those people that are doing it, it's just interesting to talk about this in the context of the previous segment, which just was like, he's a jerk kind of thing. But he is thinking about this. But in a way, he's going to have every other AI model company that's building agentic AI, that's building autonomous AI, agree to these things as well. It can't just be an OpenAI thing. And I think this is one of the reasons why people worry about this. It's because he is trying to have a ton of influence, both from a technology specific level, but also from a political level as well. Okay, let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg, and then we're going to get to some community stuff.
Yep, let's do that.
Okay. So Mark Zuckerberg just explained again, according to Dustin writes some really, really good stuff.
Yep.
Really, really good stuff.
Thank you, Dustin, for...
Yeah, thank you, Dustin, for doing this. It's really, really good stuff. Thanks for letting me follow you.
By the way, he liked our video yesterday.
I saw that. Oh, and by the way, the secret CFO also liked it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you to you as well.
Thank you very much, guys. Please put out more tweets like that. Are super interesting because it really give us some great ideas.
And I like the fact that it starts the conversation. One of the things that Martin and I talk about a lot is that the original article is not necessarily the most important part of this. It's the opinion on that article that actually matters. And what Dustin is doing here is saying he's read some news about what Mark Zuckerberg said, and then he's writing his own opinions on it, and that's the important part of this. I want to get to this quickly because I think it's really important. Zuckerberg is saying that these things were all chasing something that ended up being fundamentally very valuable. And the point he's trying to make is that every major infrastructure build-out follows the same arc. And I've talked about this a lot too, but Dustin has just put it in a way that's more eloquent and more straightforward. This new thing happens, massive amounts of capital flow in, speculation completely outruns reality, and then the whole thing collapses. He gives 3 examples of this. The railroads did it, way overbuilt. The internet did it. There was a massive internet bubble at the end of the 1990s and the beginning of the 2000s. Tons of money was invested. Tons of companies went bankrupt. And fiber optics did it as well. Way overbuilt, this fiber optic stuff. But the point that Zuckerberg is making now is that this is not the case in AI. It's just not. Okay, this is people. I just want to get to the right thing here. The asset gets distressed. He's talking about these when like the railroads and the other stuff that he was talking about. But it's just a great opportunity to buy more. And the over-leveraged people will buckle, but they'll go under. But here's the thing. The GPUs, the data centers, and the power that gets built to do this are not going to go away. And every previous bubble, according to Zuckerberg's conversation, burst because demand hit a ceiling. And this is actually the important point. You only need so many railroad tracks. You only need so much fiber. But artificial intelligence doesn't work like that. The demand for intelligence is never going to stop growing. Okay, it's going to keep holding, and that means that this bubble is unlikely to burst in the same way that other bubbles have burst. And I agree with Mark here. I agree with Mark. People are not. The demand for intelligence doesn't plateau. It's going to continue to compound. That is what Dustin wrote, and I completely agree with this. Okay. Do you want to do some answer some community questions?
Yes. So we had some really good questions.
And thank you everybody for writing these stuff in. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. Like thank you to all of our listeners for sending us questions. We love to answer your questions on the show. So please send us more. You can just
more is better than less.
Comment on each one of our videos. That doesn't matter which one. We are going to see your post, and we are going to pick the best question to then feature on the show. So you can do that as much as you want. So here it's actually a free question, Michael, not just one. It's actually a free question.
But one guy, what car?
From what car? Exactly. So his first question is, we are all getting faster at building with AI, but are we actually getting better at knowing what to build? And how do we solve the direction problem and not just the speed problem? So I think it was like a super interesting question.
Very.
Because I think the answer is that we actually do not get better at knowing what to do.
Exactly. That's the right answer, though.
Zero.
The real answer is
zero.
We're not getting better.
We are not getting better. The 2 problems that have been like always a problem when you start something new, which is what to build and distribution.
Yep.
AI doesn't help there at all. At the moment.
At all.
Right?
Not yet.
Right now we can just build things much faster, right? But yeah, like so that's what I want. Like when we do build so 2 points that actually I wanted to add to that was pretty interesting. What is AI doing right now? The first thing, when we do build the right thing, AI is actually helping to make the speed of building so much higher.
Right.
So which means when we have multiple companies who are doing the same thing and then compete, now actually AI has just raised the bar so high, so much higher than it was before.
Go ahead.
Because now you actually need to use AI. You need to be able to achieve the pace that AI gives you, because otherwise, if you don't, then the competition is actually doing it. Right.
Exactly.
So we don't know better what to do But when we do, then now we have to use AI. It's like a must.
But don't you also think you fail faster? Because if you can build faster, you can fail faster. So now you
Hopefully, yeah.
eliminate the thing that
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So you're learning as you're going?
Yep.
Go ahead.
So then the second point to add to this question was something also that is pretty true, I think, is that as the cost of building software is becoming much and much lower thanks to AI,
Yep.
we may be able to build new software that we actually could not build
For sure.
before.
Yeah,
right?
we spent a ton of time talking about
So
this.
even if AI doesn't really tell you, okay, you get to build this thing, it doesn't really help air, but it can actually help in a way that before we wanted to build this big thing, it's like a big project, but it doesn't really make any money.
Right.
But now, because the cost of software is so much lower,
Yep.
it's so much easier to build it, then now maybe the money question is less relevant.
Because we could build so much faster.
And just now we can build so much faster. And I think that could be actually pretty true in the public sector. Like for example, like something that I just
Just thought off the top of your
illustrate,
head.
yeah.
You just
But
thought off the top of your head.
like think about like some sort of software that would use the city cameras to just check how much trash there is into the streets. That doesn't make any money, so you are not going to spend.
And we never would have built it
$1 million.
before. Never
Yeah.
would have built it before.
And you would never spend so much money building that. But
No.
now that it's easy to build, maybe that would make sense to actually do it and then provide benefit to the community.
Yeah.
So I think like this
And
is
there are
the
thousands of things like this
It is
in the
thousands
public
of
sector
things,
and
yeah.
in the private sector as well.
Let's
Automate this process. It's not going to make us any money. Yeah, but it'll make
Yeah.
us more efficient.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe we are not getting better at knowing what to build, but we can see more opportunities right now thanks to the cost going down.
Okay.
So that was my first.
What about his
answer.
second question?
Second question. So his question is: AI makes people more productive. I guess that's what you mean. But what about the people who can't access it, can't afford it, and don't know it exists? So this is exactly what we were told before.
Right.
Does it widen the gap or close it? If it was 3 weeks ago, I would have replied the gap. I mean, I think it's closed the gap, giving access to everyone. That was my thought 3 weeks ago. But since I definitely changed my mind, and I think right now it's actually widening the gap. It's actually widening the gap. And in the context of answering this question, I wanted to show you another tweet from Mark Henderson, who say magical OpenClaw experiences that use frontier models cost $300 to $1,000 per day,
I saw that.
heading to $10,000 per day and more.
More. Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, not everyone can afford that.
Can I make the counter argument?
Yeah.
Here's the counter argument. Remember we were talking earlier about like Bill Gates said they wanted to have a computer on everybody's desk and it seemed insane. There was no free model for this.
Yeah.
There was nothing. If you didn't have $6,000 in like 1978 or 1979, let's say 1980, you couldn't afford a computer.
Yeah.
When I went to college with a bunch of really rich people. I couldn't afford a computer. But those guys started drifting into like buying computers because their moms and dads could buy them like a $6,000 computer. It was different. There was no free tier. So now, to the extent that you have access to the internet, and to be fair, only half the world's population does. So 4 billion people have it, 4 billion people don't. But the 4 billion people that do all have access to some kind of free tier here. So it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
I do get the sense that like the most powerful tools, like Mark Andreessen says, are going to be very, very expensive. So it's not a one for one. It's not apples to apples. But there is some more access. So it widens it and it closes the gap kind of at the same time.
Yeah. So like one more story that I can share with you. Like a few weeks ago, I went to this Cursor event in Bangkok.
Right.
And so everybody, like I was so excited to go meet with other builders, with other people like, doing stuff, right?
Right.
And then very quickly I realized that there were actually this weird feeling where I could use Opus every day because our company can
Pay
afford
for
it.
Yep.
And that was not the case for
Everybody
else.
Yeah, it's weird.
And so you are so excited. You just want to share, show people, okay, what are you doing? What are you building? And you see very quickly that people do not have the same problem.
So this is
right?
true, right? We have to be careful about the bubble within which we exist, because we think that everything that happens to us, which is why I'll never forget.
Yeah.
My 10th grade teacher said this to me.
Okay.
Don't ever generalize from your own experience.
Yeah.
Because you can't.
Yep.
Go ahead.
And so that's what really opened my eyes. That's why I said like a few weeks before I would have answered this question differently, because I really saw in the eyes of people, I was like, yeah, look, I can build this thing that's really, really amazing. And then they asked me, okay, what do you use? Opus. People say, yeah, okay, that's super expensive. I
can't use it.
I can afford it. And then I was like, no, I wanted to speak with you. I wanted to have some fun
I'm here
together.
to learn, dude.
Yeah, I didn't expect that type of feeling at all,
Right.
to be honest. And so unfortunately, I think today it definitely widened the gap so much because not everyone has access to it, and I really hope that this gap close and close and close and close, right? Like
Yeah.
the fastest possible, the better. And maybe like as you just said, like that's a good analogy. Like when the computer came out at first, you had to buy it. Yeah, there was no free tier.
No free tier.
As we have right now on these models. Today, everyone has a computer, so which means like the gap has closed at
But
some
everybody
points.
does, but doesn't. It's
Yeah,
weird, right? Do you know what I mean?
You're right. There's like still a
lot of people that
big part of
don't,
the
but
population
yeah.
that don't. But so yeah, that's our answer to this actually very interesting question.
So one more question he asked.
One more question from
Let me grab this one.
Perfect. Go ahead.
So Wakar also asks at the end of his list of questions, governments can barely regulate social media. How are they going to regulate AI that evolves faster than any law can be written?
Yep.
So that is not an untrue statement, and it's a fair question, but it's not unique to AI. I existed in the financial services business at the highest level for 20-something years, and every time we innovated on a new product, the regulators were like, we don't have a regulation for this. And if they started to regulate that, which meant that we couldn't use or couldn't do or couldn't profit from that product, we'd create another product that was outside the regulatory environment and then try to get like legal internal approval to do it until the regulators caught up. Right, and one of the reasons why is because the regulators never existed inside of our business. So they couldn't anticipate the products that were coming in the same way that for both social media and for AI. Like if you go just look at Congress in the United States, it's a bunch of octogenarians.
It's true.
People in their 70s and 80s.
Yep.
There's no way they're going to understand. And that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but a lot of the guys and gals there are old.
Yeah. In Europe, same. I was so
Same
surprised
thing.
when they said this guy's gonna be the head of AI. Okay.
Okay, good, Grandpa.
I mean, like I don't mean anything bad to them, right? But
No,
this
no,
is
but
exactly
how would they
to your
possibly
point,
know?
right? That is exactly to your point. Like, have they used AI? What is their experience? Have they built anything with AI? The answer to all of these questions is probably a big no, right? Like,
Right.
So when you don't use the tech, when you don't understand the tech, and when you're not, as you said, the regulators was not in the room with you every day.
No.
And plus, when there is so much technology advancement like this, and you have all of these companies that have a
Right.
huge financial benefit of being fast and being the
Right.
first at launching something, it creates.
But
a
there's also
huge
no
gap.
incentive for the guy that works in the AI company to go take a job in the regulator's
Yeah,
office.
yeah, true.
Which same reason there was no incentive for the guy who was in the structured products group at Goldman Sachs to go become a regulator. Because why would he give up all the potential revenue here to then just regulate this thing? He'd rather be here doing it. So the people that worked there were very, very smart. It wasn't like they were not smart. They just didn't know and didn't interact in the environment every day. They weren't on the field every day. So it's not unique to AI. It's still an issue. It's a really good question, but just let you know that it's not unique to this.
Yep.
Okay. So
Perfect. Actually, this is like a pretty good transition to our next AMA.
Go for it.
We had like another question that was actually very related to the same type of problems. Like
it kind
how
of related
are
to everything
going
we
to-
spoke about today.
Yeah,
Go for it.
completely. That's really, really great. And so this is actually an article that Tim Green has written himself.
He asked us a question a week ago.
Yes. And then he wrote this article. He listens to the show. He sent us
Thank you, Tim.
the article. Thank you very much, Tim. And it's a really very detailed article. There's a lot of information. We leave a link to it in the description.
So people should read this. Yeah.
Yeah. So please, like, if you're interested into GDPR, the different regulatory gaps,
And if they have any more questions on it, happy to answer. Yeah.
and then
Read the
definitely
article.
send us all the questions. We're super happy to answer them, and also feel free to contact Tim if that's a topic that is interesting to you. But so, here is what's very interesting into this article, following the regulation question. When you have an AI chatbot that shows you an ad, it's showing this ad to you or to whoever happens to be asking that question right now. Because there is really two different things here. The first one is, the traditional contextual advertising is when we are reading an article online, for example, let's say about shoes, and then we see an ad for shoes on this page.
Right.
Okay. So in this case, the advertiser, they know nothing about us. They just know that we are on that specific page. And so that's pretty much what we consider the clean version of online advertising. They just know we are on that page about shoes. They show us an ad.
They don't know who you are. They don't know why you're
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, they don't have much
But they
information.
know you're there.
And that's contextual.
Yep.
Okay. But the big difference here when to your point of earlier with OpenAI launching ads, is that ChatGPT remembers your conversation. And that's actually what they say at OpenAI. They say, hey, we are launching memory.
Long context. They know everything.
Long context, memory. So next time you launch a chat, you don't need to explain to me everything again because I remember things about you, right? And it's not things that he remembers today. It's like months of conversation, even years right now. This is what launched in November.
Did they say how far back it goes or no?
I don't have the answer to this question.
Go ahead.
But so ChatGPT knows your preferences, your habits, your worries, right? You were talking about your knee earlier, and now you can wonder, hey, do I really want to say that to ChatGPT? ChatGPT remembers that. He remembers also the things that you ask him again and again. And so which means when it serves you an ad, it's not just responding to what you're asking right now. It can use everything that it knows about you. So basically what does that mean is that two people asking ChatGPT the exact same thing can have two completely different ads based on their profile, right? And it's not
because the stuff you're asking about could be way different than the stuff that I'm asking about, even if it's on the same topic.
Yeah, because we are two completely different person with different needs, and ChatGPT knows all of that thanks to all the things that we are telling him, right? And so according to Tim, this is not contextual advertising. This is not putting
It's something different.
Yeah, it's something different.
This is something different.
And we could say that that's advertising based on a profile. And OpenAI, interestingly, still calls this contextual advertising, which makes sense because from a law standpoint, contextual advertising has a much lighter regulatory burden under GDPR than profile advertising. So it looks like they take the easy route to say, hey, we just do contextual, and then all the memory question looks and answered.
Can I make another point about this, if you don't mind?
Yep.
97% of the people that are actually being advertised to don't know the difference between contextual advertising and profile advertising, right? Anyway, go ahead.
So that's the first question. Like, how does from a law standpoint this is going to be interpreted, right?
So this is just like this question here about
exactly, and especially when they will try to expand to Europe, right? This is going to be a big question. But I think there's actually a bigger question here that teams like talk about into the article that is actually even more interesting.
What is that?
Because even if there is no ads, okay, like if we just remove the ads,
they're still remembering everything, even if you never get an ad. If you pay for it, they're still
LLM still remembers
everything about you.
Absolutely everything that you tell about them.
So can part of the paid tier be like, you can't remember everything about me?
So this is where it's really funny because they sell and Anthropic is exactly the same thing here, right? They don't serve ads, but they still have memory.
Right.
And they say, hey, we launch memory as a cool feature. So that's how they sell it, right? They say, hey, now ChatGPT Claude is going to remember everything that you say to him, and that's a cool feature.
Right. It's
that's
super
how
cool.
They sell it.
It's super cool.
But then Tim point out that, and I really like this idea that actually don't forget that Anthropic or ChatGPT keep all of this information about us, and everything that we share is stored on their servers. So I think
that can't be good.
To me, that's actually pretty interesting when you think about it, like in those terms, because people today are concerned about cookies on websites.
Feels kind of quaint, doesn't it?
So quaint.
Feels like kind of quaint.
Compared to telling all of your life to ChatGPT, and it remembers that.
Because no way to delete it. I can delete cookies from my machine if I know how to do it. Right?
Yeah, and cookies really, they follow you on the internet. They serve ads for retargeting. They don't know about your knee injury. Like they have like very little information compared to what you say to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And as you,
by the way, my knee's not injured. That was just an example. That was just an example.
Okay, thank God your
my knee's perfectly fine.
But yeah, and to your point, I'm pretty sure that people do not understand how much information they are giving to ChatGPT.
Nah.
And so they are concerned today about cookies.
Yeah.
There is really a big question here.
Yeah.
So now that's the next question. Like, okay, if we are scared about cookies that are super regulated now, what is going to be the regulation framework around OpenAI and Anthropic keeping all of this information about us?
Yeah.
And today,
where does GDPR come into play? And even in Asia or in Thailand, there's other regulations around, like
almost every country right now has some
information,
sort of
personal. I forget what
GDPR.
it's called in Thailand, but yeah.
And so how is that going to play from a regulatory standpoint? And so this is like a bigger question than just the ads. And then something that I wanted to add as well to this article from Tim, which is what once again super interesting, is that the way open source platforms like OpenClaw, for example, work, like when they say, hey guys, we are going to launch agents into your we are going to launch memory for your agents.
Yeah.
This memory is actually files that live on your local machine. So they are not stored in the LLM memory the same way OpenAI or Anthropic is storing the memory.
But how are but this brings up another question now. How much storage does it take up?
So it's
what's the structure of the files?
Yep. So it's super small, but like very tiny files. So it's set for like tons of memory.
I understand.
To say, but from a regulatory
standpoint, it's private information.
Privacy standpoint, no one has access to this, right? So if you're really concerned about your privacy, it's way better to use a platform like OpenClaw to then access OpenAI. It's like
except you can't use that
models.
With Anthropic now unless you pay through the nose, right?
You got to pay for the API. Yes, that's way more expensive than it was last week. but that's actually something that is really differential here, right? So if tomorrow privacy becomes a really big issue, this platform like OpenClaw once again will have a much nicer way to handle this memory.
So some orchestration layer, even if it's not OpenClaw.
Yes, which is going to be, I think, better accepted by the public.
Got it. Right. Very interesting stuff.
Yep.
Tim, thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Tim, again. Super interesting points. And so for those who want to go deeper into this article, once again, we'll put the link into the description. And if anyone has other article to share with us or any question, you can send it to us. Super happy to talk about it on the show.
Perfect. Okay, that's it for today?
I think this is it for today.
Okay, that's it for AGTP today. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Tim and to Akar and to everybody that asked us questions today. We want to get more and more of that. So give us a thumbs up on today's video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on all of our socials, on X, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. And as Martin said before, any question you want, just give it to us on X, give it to us on our LinkedIn, give it to us on our YouTube channel. The more questions we have like this, the more actual ask us anything we can do. Please let us know. And we'll be back tomorrow at the same time live on YouTube and on X. My name is Michael Waits. That is Martin Ronfort. Bye for now.